But the other thing that really was kind of encouraging was, like, I went to take some photos, and there were kids everywhere. I thought, geez, if I take these photos back to the staff, they're going to freak out when they see kids going everywhere. It was kind of like organized chaos. So I didn't show them those photos. And I was looking at some of the stuff on the wall, and I turned around, and the hallways were empty. And I walked around, and kids were in classrooms like a traditional class, still learning, still getting lessons. So I don't want you to get the misconception that they're just always building and doing projects, that they are still in the classroom, they are still getting the knowledge that they need, and then they apply that towards the projects that they're doing, which is really important. And the other fact was, I was high-tech high, so I kind of went with this perception that it was like the super technology school. And we're doing great here at Dover and for technology. So we're really fortunate that way, that they didn't have anything out of the extraordinary. They had mounted projectors like we do. They've got laptops like we do. They have desktop computers like we do. So we're doing well in the technology regards. And so it's really exciting for us to see how we can kind of go down the road and keep going.
Thanks, Randy. So we came back quite energized, quite, as Dan said, transformed, you know. And we wanted to be able to do something. I know the last few moments when we were in San Diego, we said, well, and part of our presentation that we did there, we did a presentation of our learning. And that's the first time we learned about that whole concept. And one of the things we said is that we wanted to be able to say, what if we could build something like this at Dover? What if we could come back and say, what would it look like at Dover? And so that's what we wanted to present to our staff. And so the next step was really to be able to say, here's what we did, and now we need to form a 21st century learning or project-based learning team to be able to see how we can make it go to that next step. And this is our mission statement or vision statement that we came up with. We wanted to be able to build this, and this is what we had to say. Step 4. That team also decided, look, we need to be able to get some data. This all feels good, but let's get the research behind this. So, and let's actually get some data that's relevant to us. And so we divided up into several teams, and one of those teams was headed up by Denise Montgomery.
Hi. I'm going to invite my students who are involved to come and join me. This is Laura, who I haven't seen since the last semester, and this is Lindsay, who I'm currently teaching, but they were both in my Marketing 11 class. So when we were on a quest to find out how students feel about the idea of project-based learning, these two young ladies were involved, along with the entire class. They actually did the research.
We designed the questions that were used in the survey. And
we also met with teachers to ask to borrow their students, and helped answer any questions that might have come up during the survey.
They were also involved in, like they were in the room when each class was brought down or small group was brought down, because we basically were looking at 30 kids from every grade to get a good cross-section of the whole school, which we achieved by asking teachers for their kids. They loaned them out, and they had a coffee. And then we also picked up kids that really aren't into school too much, like the kids that hang out in the hallway, we find in the locker bay, that we shoo into classes. We try to include all people from all areas of our school. So at this point, they're switching the program around. These are the slides. I'm going to go to this first. Okay. So we'll do a little timeout. If we want to know where are we going, if we want to know what skills are needed in the 21st century, this is our effort to try to communicate that to you. All the research is pointing that we should be focusing in education on helping kids acquire these skills. These are the skills that will lead them to success in the future. Okay? Go to the next slide. Traditional schools separate students based on ability. Traditional schools separate hands from minds. They separate students from the world beyond. A critical difference in this type of learning that we are trying to present to you tonight is that the learning in this building would model typically what we would see in the workplace. For example, students from different grades working together. For example, people critiquing, students critiquing work and having discussions around how to improve. Okay. 21st century learning and project-based learning will integrate students, the subjects, and the world beyond. That is the point of it. If we teach today as we taught yesterday, we rob our children of tomorrow. I absolutely believe in that statement. And, okay, they're really changing my order up. All right, so we'll be flexible here. I think we're going to get called back up.
You remember what it was like in school. It was boring. You sat in class, memorized as much as you could, and tried to pass a test at the end. But is that good enough? These days, school can be more interesting and effective by focusing students on work that matters. This is project-based learning explained. Most adults live in a world of projects. Whether it's a job assignment, home improvement, or planning a wedding, we need to actively solve problems. But unfortunately, schoolwork looks more like this than this. Let's take a look at this project-based world. Meet Claire. She was recently presented with a challenge. Her company, Super Suds, makes soap, and it was up to her to find the most earth-friendly way to produce it in the future. Her boss gave her a budget and a few requirements, and it was up to her to come up with a solution. She organized and managed a team who researched the options and created materials summarizing the issues. Claire's team asked for feedback and presented their findings to the boss. Claire came out of the project looking like a rock star, and she learned a lot about green products. If you look closely, Claire's success involved critical thinking, collaboration, and communication, things that aren't often taught in traditional classrooms. The world needs more Claires, so how do we get them? The answer is project-based learning, or PBL. By focusing students on a project, teachers put them on a path that deepens their knowledge and builds skills they'll need in the future. Here's what I mean. Mr. Simmons has always been a good science teacher, and his students do well on Friday's tests. Unfortunately, what they learned was gone by Saturday morning. That wasn't good enough for him. Soon he learned about project-based learning and decided to give it a shot. Mr. Simmons got the idea for his first project on microorganisms when nearly half of his students were suddenly absent with the flu. He asked his students why they thought so many of their classmates got sick at the same time. That lively discussion produced a lot of good questions and a list of things the kids wanted to know. Mr. Simmons then announced their project was to help elementary school kids understand, how can we not get sick? After dividing the class into teams, he got them started on the project. It was up to the students to ask questions, research, collaborate, give each other feedback, and figure out the best ways to make their points clear to children. One team chose to make an educational video on the connection between hand washing and avoiding the flu. Another chose to create posters to show how viruses spread. The project teams showed off their final work to an enthusiastic audience of parents and their children at a nearby elementary school. Sitting in the front row was our good friend and local rock star Claire, who saw a bit of herself in the students. It was clear that the project was a success for the students, the audience, and Mr. Simmons. His students practiced critical thinking, collaboration, and communication. The project wasn't about memorization, but learning in depth about viruses and how to prevent spreading disease, a lesson they will never forget. At the end of the presentation, Claire introduced herself to the students and told them that they were rock stars and that the world needs more people who can think like them. To learn more about project-based learning, Go to BIE.org.
Okay, so that should help a little bit to explain what project-based learning is, hopefully. Just remembered the microphone. I believe that next is the results of our survey. That gave us some hints and clues as to how the kids feel about this. The video you just watched was our introduction to doing the survey. They came into the room, we had a script that we read, they saw this video, they did the survey. The whole process took 15 minutes for 30 students. Okay? So select the phrases that best describe how you prefer to acquire knowledge. I don't know if you can read this, but over here is 31% collaborating with others, 22% investigating ideas, 22% creating, 21% solving problems. Next slide, please. I believe working with community members would enhance my learning, which is a key component to project-based learning, that the learning doesn't happen just at your desk, that the process of learning involves the community in some way, and that the way of evaluating the student involves the community in a presentation of what I've learned. Okay? 76% of the kids said that they would like to be involved with the community. I like exploring a topic and going wherever it takes me, 77%. Okay? Another key component of project-based learning, everybody doesn't have to do the same thing. The process you take might be completely different than the process that Lacey takes, but we both learn along the way. Okay? I like exploring a topic and going wherever it takes me, 77% again said yes. And would project-based learning make you more interested in going to school? I love this one. 64% of kids would be more excited about coming to school. All grades. Okay? Yes? Would you rather problem solve real-life situations or learn from a textbook? 74%. Do you like discussing your ideas with others? 80% said yes. Okay. Do you remember more when you're working in a small group as opposed to working by yourself? About 60%. And do you think you would get a better grade with project-based learning? 61% of the students said yes. Okay, the last thing I want to say about this is the process of doing the survey was, in a sense, project-based learning. And those questions, which I thought were excellent questions, in fact, let me back up a bit. I asked the staff to give me some questions that I could put into the survey. And then I thought, what am I doing? It's about project-based learning. We were learning market research right then. Our chapter was on market research. We put the chapter aside for a few days, and I asked them, after they watched the video, could you come up with some questions that would give us clues, hints as to whether or not this would be successful based on how the kids feel? Their questions, by far, which was embarrassing, were better than ours. I think they put more time into it. Okay.
Great, thank you, Denise. So, as I'm sitting here watching this, this is project-based learning, what we're doing here. One thing is an important piece of all of this is that staff, our community, and in most schools, you don't get that sense of collaboration because people are working off in their subject areas in their classrooms. Being able to put together this presentation today, all of the things that we've done so far this year have been a collaborative effort. And this is exactly what our students need to be doing. We also need to be modeling project-based learning. So that's an important part of what we need to do within this community, is to be able to recognize we're all learners. We are, in fact, on this journey together. We need to be working together.